Depending on how you run bash, it looks for several different startup files. The first version of this we'll look at refers to your login shell. Your login shell is the bash program that runs when you log in, if it is set to be your login shell for your account. A graphical system user does not start the bash shell as the first thing they do when they log in. When they log in, they're logging in through a graphical program that starts a windowing system. That windowing system provides the graphical user's shell, as it were, for running commands and applications within the system. If that user starts a terminal application, that terminal application will start a bash program, but that is not logging onto the system. The user is already logged in. When we talk about a login shell, we're talking about a command line shell that is the first program started after logging in. So on a console of a server, or a desktop that's not running a graphical system, or on a network login to the command line. That first shell you get when you start up is your login shell. It's used to run other programs, manage files, observe and control the system, do whatever the user logged in to do. When they're done, and they indicate they're done by pressing Control-D on a line by itself, which tells bash there is no more input, we've run to the end of our commands, or by typing the exit command that exits the shell. That is known as logging out. The reason being, we've told the system this shell is no longer required. We aren't doing any other tasks in the system. They can let someone else log in and use this device or network connection. That is a login shell. And it has a few things it does special, specifically because it is logging in or logging out. If you start additional shells once you have logged in, those are still shells, but they are non-login. They're normally also interactive, so we call them interactive non-login shells. And the things that you might want done when you log into the system might not be the same things you want done on a non-login shell. For example, I am sitting in a terminal window right now. I've actually already logged in, and this bash shell starting up just gives me a prompt. Why? I'm ready to do some work. I don't need to know system status information or anything else because I've already logged in. I already know what's going on with the system. I just want to give some commands. If I were to initiate a login to the system, I could simulate that by using SSH to establish a network connection to a Linux system. As it happens, I'll just connect to my own system. This is a login process, so it wants me to log into the system. When I log into the system, I get some information. I get a welcome to the system with some identification. I get some potentially helpful information about the system or where to get information about the system. Normally I get some statistics depending on how busy the system is. In this case, the system is busy enough, it's choosing not to show me those statistics. There's some news information about what's new with Ubuntu that it shows me when I first log in. It gives me a summary of my software, saying that I've got some updates that haven't run. It tries to give me some update about something it can't get, so it gives me an error that says that didn't work. It tells me that since I last logged in, something's happened to the system that requires it to reboot and that I should be doing that. And it tells me when my last login was and where I logged in from, whether it was on the console device or over the network. If all of this information came out every time I ran a script, started the terminal window, I probably wouldn't be very happy, and I'd very quickly learn to just ignore it all. So then there wouldn't be much point in having it. If this only comes out when I first log in, I can deal with whatever information it has given me and move on with my day. So login is handled differently than a normal shell. I've logged into the system. This is a network login. This is not the original bash shell that I was having when I first started this terminal window. If I run the ps command, this bash process it's showing me is connected to virtual terminal 5. If I use the who command to see who is logged into my system, I will see that virtual terminal 5 is logged in, and it's logged in locally from localhost. I can see I actually have 2 other logins on virtual terminals with the IP address of my host machine. So those are obviously something else that's going on this system at this time. When I'm done with this shell and I'm ready to leave, I can use the exit command, or I can type Control D, which won't print anything, but tells the bash I have no more commands to give you. It's the end of the command list. And it will close the connection. The reason it's done that is I was connected over the network. I had a login session, so that came out because I logged out. I didn't type the command logout. I could have. Control D causes logout to run. If I were to exit this terminal window, it would not tell me connection closed because I didn't establish a new connection. I was already logged in. So login shells are special. As a result, when we start them up, we do want to have them run a different startup. Startup is controlled in Linux by environment files or startup files. In Windows, you would think of INI files or INI files. INI files typically have a list of settings and values. Bash environment files are actually shell scripts. So we can actually put anything in them that we could put in a shell script. Any command we wanted to run, we could make run before bash gives us a prompt whenever we start a new bash. What's more, there are separate environment files for login shells versus non-login shells, which is why we can make extra information come out at login, or different things happen that we don't need happening every time we start a new shell, like in a new terminal window or when running a script. There are 2 kinds of environment files. There is a global environment file that affects all users. It is in the /etc/profile file. Normally this is a script that is created by and managed by root. A default one is normally on your system, created by whoever created the distribution of Linux that you installed. Individual users can customize their own shell environment by creating environment files in their home directory. Bash specifically looks for a file called .bash_profile in the user's home directory when it starts up. If it finds it, it runs the script in there. If it doesn't, it looks for a file called .bash_login. If it finds it, it runs the script in it before giving the user a prompt when starting up. If it doesn't find that one, it looks for one called .profile. Same thing, runs the script in there if it finds it. If it doesn't find any of this, it's not a problem. It just starts up and gives a default prompt, whatever was set in etc profile, if it existed. Login shells also look for a file called .bash_logout, which, if it exists, should contain a script that runs whenever a user logs out. Most people don't have a logout. Some people have a .bash login. Some people simply have a customized etc profile. Non-login interactive shells don't use these files. Instead, interactive non-login shells look for a file in the user's home directory called .bashrc, which is a shell script. And if it exists, every time you start a new bash shell, it will run .bashrc before running whatever that shell is started to do. There is a script in the lab to try called login welcome. Login welcome simply takes the welcome message script we previously created and adds it to your login process so that when you log into the system, you get welcomed to the system. It adds a fun little program called cowsay to make it interesting. Try that lab now.